Working at Amazon warehouse is no easy thing. The shifts are long, the pace is super fast, you are constantly being watched and monitored. They seem to think you are another machine.
Mr. Bezos, you are worth $182 billion. That's a B. Why are you doing everything in your power to stop your workers in Bessemer, Alabama, from joining a union?
The votes are in. Amazon workers at a warehouse in Alabama wait to see if their drive to form a trade union will be emulated across the United States. Hello and welcome to Inside America. I'm Ghida Fakhry. Vote counting is underway in the city of Bessemer, Alabama, where workers are standing up to the second largest private employer in the United States, Amazon. Nearly 6,000 workers, mostly African Americans, are now at the center of the most closely watched unionization effort in recent U.S. history. While Amazon workers make more than double the federal minimum wage in the United States, which is just $7.25 an hour, many workers complain about the lack of respect and safety measures. They say that the pay is not commensurate with the extreme pressures and pace of their jobs. If they do succeed, Bessemer employees will be the first Amazon workers to unionize in the US. The company, which employs 1.3 million people worldwide, has been fighting its employees' efforts to join a labor union, saying that it does not represent the majority of their views. Amazon declined our request for an interview, but in a statement, a spokesperson told us the company offers a starting wage of $15.30 per hour. And, quote, "Our employees choose to work at Amazon because we offer some of the best jobs available everywhere we hire. And we encourage anyone to compare our total compensation package, health benefits, and workplace environment to any other company with similar jobs." Democratic members of Congress have rallied in Bessemer in support of the workers, and President Biden, who had labeled himself as the most pro-union president you've ever seen, released this video ahead of the union vote.
Every worker should have a free and fair choice to join a union. The law guarantees that choice. And it's your right, not that of an employer. It's your right.
Amazon's profits grew by 84% in 2020, fueled by an online shopping boom during the pandemic. Amazon hired over 450,000 new staff across the US over the last year, but is facing increasing scrutiny in Washington. Its founder, Jeff Bezos, reportedly the richest person in the world, made $58 billion between March 2020 and March 2021. He's not alone, though. Other tech billionaires also cashed in. Tesla's Elon Musk made $118 billion, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg $29 billion, and Bill Gates added $24 billion to his wealth during the same period. While the estimated net worth of Bezos is over $180 billion, the median household income in Bessemer, Alabama is just over $30,000, with 1 in 4 living under the poverty line. So what do the challenges facing this unionization effort tell us about the state of workers' rights in America today? I'm joined by Nina Turner, a Democratic candidate for Congress. She's a former Ohio State Senator and national co-chair for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. Nina Turner, you've been a big supporter of the Amazon workers in Bessemer. Union leaders helping to organize them endorsed you, calling you an important ally who has helped them strategize. The union, the RWDSU, represents, I believe, 60,000 workers in the United States, 5,000 of them in your state, Ohio. They estimate that 85% of workers at the Amazon facility are African American. How much of this fight is a labor issue? How much of it is a civil rights issue?
Well, Ghida, thanks for having me, and thanks for highlighting this important issue. And just the courage of the workers at Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama. It's both, Ghida. It's both a labor rights issue and a civil rights issue. Those two things go hand in hand. And as I was privileged to be able to sit down and talk to some of those workers before we joined a rally together, and to hear the stories that they were telling, absolutely heartbreaking. I want the people of this nation and of this world to understand that those Amazon workers are delivering for us, especially when the pandemic hit. They were called the quote unquote essential workers, but those very essential workers are scared to go to the bathroom. Those essential workers are scared to take a water break. Those essential workers who are driving the trucks that deliver the packages are too scared to stop and go to the restroom, so they're urinating in bottles or defecating in bags. Something is absolutely immoral about the work conditions for those workers at Amazon, and having the folks in Bessemer, Alabama take a strong stand and attempt to unionize is vitally important. And I thank the Retail Workers Union for helping them to organize.
And as you say, they became such essential workers during this pandemic, and yet have this grueling work and this culture, as they say, of disrespect and lack of dignity. Now, you made an impassioned speech to the Amazon workers at Bessemer, and this is some of what you told them.
The giant that you are slaying is pure unadulterated greed that treats people like widgets instead of human beings.
Now, this sounds like a tall order. How do you win when the odds are stacked against you? How do you slay this giant?
Okay, doing the things that they are doing right now. I mean, the RWDSU union coming in to help them organize is one way. And we know that there is a long history of labor organizing in this country. There was a point in time where there were no child labor laws, for example. There was a point in time that we didn't have a 40-hour work week or 8-hour work day. So they're drawing upon the best of that history and bringing it into the 21st century. It is that solidarity. You know, what happens over there happens over here, which is one of the reasons why I was so honored to be able to go into Birmingham and Bessemer, Alabama, to stand side by side with those workers. There are 3 facilities in my district that has 6,000 workers combined. And so what happens over there happens over here. And them paving the way for unionization at Amazon will have an immense impact on the workers in my district and workers all across this country.
But they are facing huge hurdles. We've also heard about the campaign of intimidation. We're also talking about Amazon and other giant companies that have higher annual revenues than the GDP of entire countries. In 2019, Amazon earned more than Pakistan. In 2017, Walmart made more than Belgium. These are the 2 largest private employers in the United States. How do you take on massive companies like these and prevail? And how do you change the anti-labor union culture here in the US?
You know, conscious-minded people come together. I mean, this is sheer collaboration and synergy building among the workaday people of this nation to stand up to slay these giants. It is going to happen because of the courage of workers like Jennifer, you know, workers like Dwayne, workers like Big Mike, and so many others that I have met in Alabama and also across this country. This is not new. When you're bumping up against the status quo, it often bumps back, but ultimately the workers are going to win. And it is in this moment that the wind beneath their wings is happening. And it is the coalescing of the grassroots around this particular movement. So it is going to happen. It's going to be hard. And the workers absolutely know that. When I talked to one worker, asked, you know, why are you staying there? Why are you continuing to work there? She said, it's a pit of snakes. But if I leave, then what is going to happen for the next worker and the next and the next? I must stay in that fight. And that really is the spirit of those workers that I met, Ghida. Not one of them said that they wanted Amazon to go out of business.
Can they really turn the tide, though? Last year, Amazon and Facebook, in fact, outspent defense companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Facebook spent over $19 million. Amazon spent about $1 million less. That's a lot of money to mount a fight against these workers. How do you win?
It is, Ghida. It seems insurmountable. You know, the president Nelson Mandela once said, it always seems impossible until it is done. Organized people will beat organized money every day of the week.
And these workers do have some powerful progressive members of Congress on their side. Senator Bernie Sanders, with whom you've worked very closely, often rails about America's billionaires. He says Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk now own more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. He says, as you have, that level of greed and inequality is not only immoral, it's unsustainable. Yet, The latest data shows that CEOs of the top 350 firms in the United States make 320 times more than the typical worker. Some call it socialism for the rich and capitalism for the rest. This is the reality of America today. So what can you and other progressives do realistically if you get elected? How do you change that?
Yeah, we definitely need to change some of this through policy. We need to tax these corporations. Again, many of them paying $0 in federal taxes cannot stand. And we need members of Congress in both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, to stand strong against these corporations and to make sure that they are paying their fair share. And we must strengthen unions. And that is why the PRO Act is so vitally important, to make sure that companies like Amazon cannot intimidate workers as they try to organize. So it is a multifaceted way that we are going to be able to win the day, not only for the workers in Amazon, but the workers of this great nation. It is unsustainable, it is untenable, and Ghida, it is immoral, the level of wealth that is obtained by the few. But meanwhile, in neighborhoods all across this country, people are stringing together 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. This is not. We're going to face this head on, and we're going to continue to organize, and ultimately we're going to win today. And in the face of a pandemic, this suffering, organized people are going to turn the tide. And not only are people like Senator Bernie Sanders, but people like Killer Mike. Michael Render has been there, and he has a great saying, Ghida: plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. And that is exactly what the workers of Amazon and Bessemer are doing. And they're coalescing. They have millions of people around this country coalescing right with them to turn the tide.
And the problem of wealth inequality has become front and center when you consider that the wealth of the top 9 American billionaires has gone up by more than $360 billion in the past year alone. Nina Turner, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ghida, for doing this most important story.
Now, Amazon workers' efforts to fight for their rights have faced obstacles elsewhere across the country. In February, New York's Attorney General filed a lawsuit against Amazon for failing to protect workers during the pandemic. The lawsuit filed in the state's Supreme Court also claims Amazon unlawfully fired and disciplined employees for raising health and safety concerns with the company. One of those workers is Chris Smalls. He was fired a year ago after leading protests over workplace concerns at a warehouse in Staten Island, New York. He joins me now. Chris Smalls, Amazon workers have become virtual heroes for millions of Americans who've depended on them during this pandemic. In fact, many of us literally survived the quarantine because of the work people like you do. A year ago, though, you were fired after leading walkouts because of what you said were the unsafe working environments at Amazon warehouses. What was the situation like for you then, and what is it like for your colleagues today?
Yes, absolutely. Well, wow. 1 year ago, it was a very scary situation. I remember coming into work every day, and every day in the domino effect, one by one, I seen my employees in my department become sick. Flu-like symptoms, dizziness, fatigue. A lot of my associates couldn't even finish their 10-hour shift. The co-workers that I was working with, my colleagues, even my managers were missing, pretty much staying home because they were already sick or afraid of being sick. It was a very eerie situation to be in. And I remember just I'm saying something's not right here, and I need to try to voice my concerns to my local HR department, which I started to do before I took further action.
And one of the actions you took was a class action lawsuit you filed against Amazon, saying it isn't just about Amazon. It's not Amazon versus Chris Smalls, it's Amazon versus the people. In fact, you also led chants of, if we don't get it, we shut it down. But some are calling the battle against Amazon a fight between David and Goliath. You said you won't let this moment pass, but can workers prevail against one of the world's most powerful companies?
I believe so. Collectively, it has to be the people. It has to be everybody, from the East Coast to the West Coast to down south, down there in Alabama right now. All of us collectively, even worldwide, internationally, everybody that's been advocating against this company for the last year and even longer than a year, for many years, it's starting to uh, take a turn for the people, the working class now. But as far as Bessemer, Alabama, when I went down there, I traveled down there to Bessemer and I spoke to several workers. The beauty of it is that they didn't know what happened to me in New York. They didn't know about my story. So me telling them the reason why I was fired and the fact that I drove 16 hours down there to stand in solidarity with them, that conversation resonated with a lot of the workers down there, to only vote yes and also tell their coworkers to vote yes as well, because they realize the importance of it.
But will these workers be better off being part of a labor union? Because Amazon says it offers workers more than twice the federal minimum wage of $7.25. In fact, in a statement, the company argues that Amazon workers are offered pay that starts at $15.30 per hour, including full health care, vision and dental insurance in safe, innovative, inclusive environments with training, continuing education, and long-term career growth. What is the key issue you and other workers are fighting for that Amazon does not actually provide?
$15 an hour sound like a decent living wage, but I can tell you when you're trying to raise a family, or if you're working at Amazon, you possibly have a second job, like I did as well. So, and they don't really mention the things they took away when they offered that $15 an hour, and I can share that with you as well. From being a worker there for many years, before the $15 an hour went into play, we used to receive monthly bonuses, and we used to receive stocks, annual stocks every year. We no longer receive that after 2018. So if you're a new hire coming into the company, you're no longer a shareholder, and you no longer have the opportunity to receive a monthly bonus for attendance or productivity. So ultimately, we lost thousands of dollars by them saving money by offering that $15.
Let me just ask you briefly, though. We don't know what the vote will result in, but what will it mean for the future of workers in America if this unionization effort does succeed, and what does it mean if it doesn't?
Well, to me, we already won. To even get to a union vote and to have all the support all the way to the highest plateau, the chief and commander, the president himself, show his support for this union drive. That tells you right there that, once again, the power of people and the power of workers coming together is very powerful. When we can go up against any juggernaut, including, like you mentioned, David versus Goliath. We're all David right now, and Amazon is Goliath. And when we all take this fight on together, we can change them systemically. And I believe that whether they're successful or unsuccessful, it already galvanized the entire nation.
And as you say, the president promised to be the most pro-union president ever, saying every worker should have a free and fair choice to join a union. Chris Smalls, thank you very much for being with us on the program.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Now, over its 27-year history, Amazon has faced just one previous effort by its workers in the US to unionize. In 2014, the majority of employees of the company's Delaware facility voted against forming a labor union. With vote counting in Bessemer underway, the outcome this time could be different. Amazon workers in other countries, though, have had much more success at unionizing. In Germany, France, Italy, Poland, and Spain, they have long been members of trade unions, while in the US, union representation overall has been in decline. In the mid-1950s, a third of Americans were members of a union. Now, just under 11% of workers are, and only 6.3% of private sector workers belong to a union. Compare that to Europe, where union membership is approximately 23%. According to a Gallup poll released last September, 65% of Americans surveyed said they generally support labor unions, and public support has been growing since 2009. Yet, while Democrats in Congress and Joe Biden push for legislation to bolster the power of unions, particularly through a bill called the PRO Act, Republican support is limited, and business associations like the Chamber of Commerce are vigorously lobbying against it. One longtime lobbyist who has focused his efforts on fighting government control over industry is Richard Berman. Berman is the founder and executive director at the Center for Union Facts, a Washington, D.C.-based interest group that is critical of labor unions. Rick Berman, you have been fighting against workers' efforts to unionize for decades. What is wrong with Amazon workers forming a labor union to protect themselves from what they say are unsafe working conditions, to protect themselves against corporate greed and the economic inequities that they face?
I don't have anything against workers organizing themselves. If you get a majority of the relevant workforce that wants to form a union, I think they should be allowed to do that. What I've not ever been against is union members exercising free will. I've been against union leaders pushing people into unions when they don't necessarily want to be in them, or using their union dues for purposes that the union members never intended them to be used for.
But it's also the abuse of power, the corruption and intimidation by large US corporations that have exploited workers for decades.
Well, you have to go back to the basic law that protects unions and protects union members, the National Labor Relations Act. That law has been in place for 85 years. There was a time where a third of the American workforce belonged to unions. The law hasn't changed. The businesses that operate today under that law were operating the same way that they were operating it under it 85 years ago, 65 years ago, whatever time frame you want to get. So the point is, people have elected not to join unions.
But you know as well as I do that they do want to join unions if they have the choice, but they have been faced with fierce corporate opposition. In fact, there's an estimated, I believe, $340 million spent every year by corporations to hire union avoidance advisors to keep employees from unionizing. You know that as well as I do.
Well, first of all, in the private sector, the rate of union membership is only 6%. So your higher number is based upon throwing in government worker unions, which is a very different animal than a private sector union.
But that is the overall number.
Yeah, but again, when we're talking about the private sector, where corporations are involved, only 6% of the workforce is unionized. And those companies who don't want to have a union in their workplace are the same companies that we're talking about 85 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 20 years ago. The fact is, those companies were operating under the same law then as they're operating under now. And the only difference is that union members are much smaller in number because people have elected not to join unions.
The point is, when companies have this amount of money, as much as $340 million a year to spend on lobbyists like you, wouldn't that money be better spent to give these workers more adequate pay?
So, the private sector unions that I was just speaking about, like the union that's trying to organize the workers at Amazon, they have $10 billion a year in dues. And they don't need $10 billion a year in dues to negotiate labor contracts. A lot of that money is used for all sorts of reasons, and one of them is to try and convince more people to join a union. So it's kind of a standoff. Yes, you have companies who spend money trying to convince people not to join, and you have these major unions with these billions of dollars trying to convince people that they should join.
But is there a problem, though? Is there a problem in your mind when you look at the power imbalance, when you look at the discrepancy in pay, that you look at Amazon, a company whose revenue amounted to more than $386 billion in 2020, a yearly increase of over $100 billion. And then you look at the workers who feel cheated by their employer, who feel intimidated, who feel that they cannot even get together to ask for better working conditions, let alone better pay.
Well, they're having a vote right now. So if they think that way and a majority thinks that way, then they'll create a union. There are unions in this country, and they're there because a majority of the workers voted for them.
All right, and we'll have to wait and see what the majority of these workers at the Amazon facility in Alabama, what they decide to vote for or against joining this union. For now, though, Rick Berman, thank you very much.
And if they decide to join, then I think that it's a right that they exercise that should be protected.
All right, Rick Berman, thank you.
You're welcome.
Today's labor issues and unionization at Amazon are just the tip of the iceberg. In a country with historically strong labor unions, Under the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, the AFL-CIO, membership in unions has plummeted over the past 30 years, from 20% in 1983 to less than 11% by 2019. Today, the US ranks among the bottom 5 of all 36 OECD countries when it comes to its union density. The picture is even bleaker, with half of unionized workers living in only 6 states, including California, New York, and Pennsylvania. And while non-unionized workers make on average 20% less than their unionized colleagues, CEOs' earnings have increased exponentially. And so, in short, the case of Amazon could be a wake-up call, one that could invigorate not only the working and the middle class, but also push the Biden administration to enact pro-labor legislation before labor issues become more and more contentious and more dangerously polarizing in a country already rife with racial and social tensions. That's all from me, Ghida Fakhry. Let us know what you think. From the entire team in Washington, thanks for watching.